Good evening and welcome. I am Uyai and here can come to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Today on Spotlight Africa, Africa celebrates 60th anniversary of the OAU on African Day. Sudan rivals accuse each other of ceasefire breaches. Most wanted Rwandan genocide suspect arrested in South Africa. IMF approves $3.5 billion loan deal with Ivory Coast. Plus, China denies hacking Kenyan state agencies. These stories are all just ahead on Spotlight Africa. Do stay with us. Thanks for joining us. We begin today's spotlight with African continent, which today celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Organization of African Unity OAU and its successor, the African Union. It was on this date in 1963 that 32 heads of independent African states met in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, along with leaders from African liberation movements to craft a way forward for Africa's complete independence from imperialism, colonialism, and apartheid. The outcome of the meeting was the creation of Africa's first post-independence continental institution, the Organization of African Unity, OAU. The OAU was formed as a manifestation of the Pan-African vision for an Africa that was united, free, and in control of its own destiny. And this was solemnized in the OAU Charter, which was adopted on May 25. Hashtag Africa Day 1963. The celebration of the 60th anniversary is an opportunity to recognize the role and contribution of the founders of the Continental Organization and many other Africans on the continent and in the diaspora who have contributed greatly to the political liberation of the continent and equally to the socio-economic emancipation of Africa. Happy African Day. Away from that, the warring sides in Sudan have accused each other of being behind breaches of the latest ceasefire, now in its third day. The one we choose was violated minutes after it came into effect on Monday night, with residents of the capital, Khartoum, witnessing airstrikes and artillery fire. Sporadic clashes between the army and a paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces (RSF), have spilled over into today. But the current ceasefire has allowed some residents to venture out of their homes for food, water, and medical care. Meanwhile, the conflict has exacerbated an existing humanitarian crisis, forced more than 1.3 million people to flee, and threatened to destabilize the region. In a related development, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in South Sudan, UNMISS, has warned that the situation in the country, that South Sudan will unravel as a result of what is happening in Sudan, noting that the war's negative effects would be felt beyond the country. He said a disruption of South Sudan's oil pipeline to Sudan, through which the landlocked country exports all its crude oil, would have an immediate impact. He added that South Sudan and its citizens' capacity to. Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Chief has urged the two warring generals in Sudan to stop sexual violence and spare the lives of civilians. Volker Turk described the conflict as heartbreaking. He called on Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo to stop what he called the senseless violence immediately. There has been a reduction in the fighting since a ceasefire came into effect on Monday, but people in Khartoum say clashes have continued in some parts of the city. In the meantime, the number of people displaced inside Sudan today by fighting between rival military factions rose to more than 1 million, according to the United Nations International Organization for Migration, IOM. IOM said another 319,000 people have fled to neighboring countries. Reports say Egypt, Sudan's northern neighbor, took in the largest share of the refugees with more than 132,000 people, while Chad took in some 80,000 refugees and South Sudan about 69,000. Recall that a long simmering power struggle in Sudan escalated violently on the 15th of April. The army, under the command of the de facto president Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is fighting the paramilitary unit of his deputy Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. The two generals jointly seized power in 2021. Even before the current crisis, Sudan was known for being one of the poorest and most politically unstable countries in the world, with 3.7 million internally displaced people due to previous crises. We move now to Kenya, where China's embassy has denied news reports that Chinese hackers attacked key state agencies in the capital, Nairobi, including the presidency. This was reportedly done to assess whether the East African nation would service billions of dollars owed to Beijing. According to reports, the years-long cyber attack started in 2019 when the Chinese started closing credit taps to Kenya as death trends started showing. But the Chinese embassy said the report was far-fetched and sheer nonsense. Meanwhile, the former leader of Kenya's outlawed Mukingi sect, Maina Njenga, has presented himself at a court in western Nkaru County a day after police said they were looking for him. Police said they seized 2 firearms and cannabis from a home linked to him in Nkaru last week. Police added that 8 suspected members of Mukingi sect were arrested during the raid. Meanwhile, Njenga has denied the allegations, saying they were political. This comes a few weeks after Njenga's homes in the capital Nairobi and in central Laikipia County were reportedly raided by security officers for unknown reasons. The Mukingi is a secretive sect that was banned in 2002 after being accused of being involved in violence and organized crime. Away from that, Zimbabwe's main opposition coalition, the Citizens Coalition for Change, CCC, has alleged that some of the more than 4,000 prisoners released on presidential amnesty last week, including child rapist President Emerson Mnangagwa, pardoned the prisoners drawn from the country's 47 prisons in an attempt to decongest overcrowded jails. Prison authorities had said rape was among offenses excluded from the amnesty. However, viral videos showed what local media said were rapists celebrating their freedom, with some who were said to have served less than a year of their term. The CCC, in a statement, said it was grossly irrational to release dangerous, unrehabilitated offenders back into society before informing or preparing rape victims. Of course, this is a really serious case in the society. We move now to Fulgence Kashima, one of the most wanted suspects accused of involvement in the 1994 Rwandan genocide, who has been arrested in South Africa town of Paarl after more than 20 years on the run. He was detained on Wednesday afternoon in a joint operation standing war crime cases for Rwanda and Yugoslavia, known as the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, IRMCT. Yemishia was one of the world's most wanted genocide fugitives. In a separate development, the leader of South Africa's main opposition party has warned of a doomsday scenario at the next election if the governing African National Congress (ANC) party goes into coalition with the Economic Freedom Fighters (EFF) to secure a majority in parliament. According to reports, the EFF is currently South Africa's third largest political party and is led by the firebrand Julius Malema. Meanwhile, South Africa is due to have elections next year. Having governed since the end of apartheid almost 30 years ago on current polling, the ANC could struggle to win an outright majority. Still in South Africa, the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters (EFF), South Africa's third largest political party, Julius Malema, has said that he would supply weapons to Russia because Moscow is in a war with imperialism. In an interview with newsmen in Johannesburg, Malema insisted that South Africa is an ally of Russia and that the ANC government's position of non-alignment only applied to the war in Ukraine. Reports say the EFF also wants South Africa to withdraw from the International Criminal Court (ICC). Recall that the ICC had issued an arrest warrant for Russia's President Vladimir Putin for alleged war crimes, but Malema has reportedly pledged to prevent any attempt to arrest the president if he attends next month's BRICS summit in Cape Town. Sierra Leone's iconic cotton tree felled by storm. Stay tuned for details of this and more after this time out. Thanks for staying tuned, and now to the rest of the story. Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has said the country will soon resume borrowing as the country grapples with its worst economic crisis in a generation. His comments come as the country is still negotiating with external creditors, hoping for debt relief of about $10.5 billion. The country was shut out of the international capital market because of its huge debt, but can now have access as a result of the bailout. The government had been criticized for excessive borrowing, one of the main factors the opposition believes plunged the country into the crisis. But the government has blamed the impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the global coronavirus pandemic. Meanwhile, President Akufo-Addo has indicated that the government will cut its expenditure and mobilize more domestic revenue. In another development, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) has approved a $3.5 billion loan agreement with Ivory Coast, which it says is designed to tackle financial challenges and assist economic transformation. The West African country will receive nearly $500 million immediately. Reports say further funds will be dependent on Ivory Coast making structural changes to its economy. The IMF says the loan will help the country tackle the triple shocks of the COVID pandemic, global monetary tightening, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In a separate development, a lawyer of a Malian Islamist rebel accused of war crimes has told judges at the International Crime Court (ICC) that her client was not a key figure in the group that took over Timbuktu in 2012. Al-Hassan A.J. Abdul Aziz's lawyer said he had tried to maintain order in a chaotic situation after the group Ansar Dine took over the city. Earlier, prosecutors and lawyers for more than 2,000 victims described al-Hassan as a cold-blooded monster. They said he headed an Islamic police force that terrorized the population of Timbuktu, especially women who were subjected to rape, forced marriages, and sexual slavery. Meanwhile, he has pleaded not guilty. Over to Namibia now, where health authorities have confirmed the outbreak of Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever (CCHF) following the death of a patient in the eastern town of Gombasis last week. According to the Ministry of Health and Social Services in a statement, lab tests confirmed the male patient died from the viral illness. Reports say a total of 27 contacts, including 24 health workers, have been identified. The authorities have urged people who may have had direct contact with the patient to report to the nearest facility. The ministry said one confirmed case is considered an outbreak, according to World Health Organization (WHO) protocols. Away from that, British exploration firm Tullow Oil has assumed full ownership of a major Kenyan oil project after its joint venture partners, Canada's African Oil Corps and France's Total Energies, pulled out. Africa Oil said it abandoned the project to concentrate on regions with high petroleum potential, while Total said it was considering other options. Reports say it had 25% stake in the South Lochia Basin. Total Energies had at the end of last year indicated plans to dispose of its stake as doubts lingered on Kenya's ambition to join the League of Oil Exporting Nations. Tullow Oil had last year disclosed plans to exit the project amid funding problems, which are likely to worsen with the exit of its partners. Meanwhile, Kenyan authorities are yet to comment on the impact of the exit and whether the country's oil project was still viable. Elsewhere, one of Algeria's best-known opposition leaders has been detained by the authorities for unknown reasons. Karim Tabo has become one of the most recognizable faces during mass pro-democracy rallies organized by the Hirak movement. He's reported to have been arrested in suburb of Algiers. Hirak protesters who forced long-term President Abdelaziz Bouteflika to step down in 2019 are demanding a sweeping overhaul of the country's system of government. Meanwhile, dozens of people have been detained in Algeria over links to the movement. In another development, Uganda police say they have registered a case of attempted murder and suicide by shooting after a 47-year-old officer is thought to have shot several bullets into the room of his boss and then turned the gun on himself. The incident took place during the early hours of Wednesday at Makoto Police Post in Kasanda district in central Uganda. According to Ugandan police in a tweet, the scene of crime has been visited and documented. Meanwhile, a police spokesperson has warned that Uganda has seen 3 cases of shootings involving police and security operatives in the space of 1 week. Reports say in response to the violence, the country's internal security organization is offering officers further training on gun handling. And of course, we also have to analyze them of their psychological stability. Away from that, a Tunisian court has dismissed a case against 3 students for posting satirical songs online. In the recording set to the theme tune of the well-known children's show Baba the Elephant, they sang about police breaking into a home and wrongly accusing its residents of smoking cannabis. The composition was intended to highlight police corruption and the harsh penalties given to those caught using the drug. The song soon went viral on TikTok. Reports say the arrest of the songsmith 3 days later caused widespread outrage. Lastly, on Spotlight Africa, an iconic landmark in Sierra Leonean capital Freetown, A 100-year-old towering cotton tree has been brought down by a heavy storm. President Julius Maada Bio said the tree fell after a heavy downpour on Wednesday night. He described it as a great loss to the nation. The president said the tree was regarded as a symbol of liberty and freedom by early settlers. Freetown was founded as a home for repatriated former slaves in 1787. Reports say the iconic tree also appears on Sierra Leone banknotes and is said to be the oldest of its kind in the country. Meanwhile, President Bio has said there will be something at the same spot to represent the great cotton tree's place in the country's history. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. You have been watching Spotlight Africa. I am Uyai Aniekan. Thanks for watching, and I do hope you have a great evening.